Hello and welcome to episode 189 of Drink the Movies. I am Brian here as always with Michaela. And Michaela, a couple weeks ago, we talked about Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, right? We talked about obviously the film, but the long-lasting legacy of that film, how it opened all of these doors, how it
Mm.
changed the way people looked at scary stories and horror stories, psychological thrillers, and that was great. Then it seemed like there were a couple of like a decade or so of time being spent before we would get our next kind of linchpin in terms of horror stories and defining a genre and opening the eyes of what could be done with films like these. And today we're talking about The Exorcist.
We are. And this film is I don't know, it's such an iconic thing now, right? People have talked about it and made reference to it for such a long time, since before we were born. And so I have kind of known of The Exorcist in terms of like scary stories and scary movies since I was a very, very young child. So I'm so excited that we're going to be able to revisit kind of this supernatural horror film and all of its like filmography appreciation, but also just the fact that it is literally one of the most terrifying kind of
Mm,
subgenres of
yes.
like paranormal activity, right? Because this isn't just a ghost. This is a demon. And for people who are very fervently, faithful believers in, especially in the Catholic Church, this is probably the scariest thing that could possibly ever happen to you in your entire
Yeah.
life, right? That is also considered very real, a very real possibility. Because if God is
Yes.
real and Jesus is real, then the devil and all his demons are real, and they are with us, very close to us all the time. And that in and of itself kind of fuels this entire subgenre now of films, all from this story and this film. It's pretty exciting to talk about, actually.
Absolutely. It is very exciting to talk about, and it's exciting to go back and watch it a little bit more analytically because I brought up Psycho, and a lot of parallels here for me in this one because you remember all of the stuff with Regan right in the film, but everything else is a little bit fuzzy every time when I put this on, and we're going to talk about all that when we get into it. But before we do, if grab your crucifix and grab some cocktail ingredients because we're going to need
Right.
to get a drink going here for this one for sure. So let's do that. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to whip up this week's cocktail.
So, Brian, for this cocktail, we wanted to do something that was green for the green eyeballs and the green split pea soup. We wanted to do something that was just
Mm-hmm.
very different, something that was going to definitely bring out something inside you. And what we found was in Easy Living New York. It's a YouTube channel, really fun. Go look. They did this cocktail called "Is There Someone Inside You?" And it has all of these things, including the crucifix made out of matcha, which is
It
great.
does. As a matcha crucifix, that's what you're going to need, right? To ward off any devils or spirits, demons that might be taking up residence within you. So this cocktail it comes together pretty simply. I think it missed a couple of marks, and we're going to talk about that here after we get this put together. So let's do that first. Let's get one of these made up. So into a shaker tin, you're going to put in 1.5 ounces of Blanco tequila. Now they're doing theirs with an infused kefir lime and kiwi infused tequila. It didn't really talk about how they came about that. If they bought it, I didn't really see anything that were along those lines. So what I did was I just took a cup. I put in I sliced up a kiwi and sliced up a lime, put it in there with like a cup of the tequila. I let it sit for a day, strained it out, and that's what I used. So you want 1.5 ounces of that. If you don't want to be bothered with that, totally don't be. Just use 1.5 ounces of your Blanco tequila. Half
There
ounce
you go.
of green chartreuse. We've talked about this to death. If you have green, use that. If you have yellow, use that. Whichever you find at your store, buy that. You may be able to find them. You may not be able to find them. But a half ounce of that, a half ounce of lime juice, a half ounce of simple syrup, and I don't know, roughly like a bar spoon or so of matcha powder, along with an egg white. So go ahead and give that a vigorous shake. You want to get that nice and foamy. Go ahead and throw some ice in there, shake it up again, and then strain it into a coupe glass. It's going to be super green, like vegetally green from that matcha powder. It's going to have a green kind of foamy layer on top, and then you can sprinkle some matcha on top. And if you want to be extra fancy, you can go ahead and cut just out of a piece of paper, a little like crucifix there, and you can sprinkle that on so you get that added effect there. So then you drink and enjoy this, Michaela. What did you think about this one?
Mm. Um, thought it was okay. It's not my favorite of the drinks. I had a very visceral reaction when I first took a sip. I was like, oh God. The green chartreuse for us, for really cut through. And it was only half an ounce. So I was really surprised at
Hmm.
how little of anything else I tasted. It was sweet enough thanks to the simple syrup, but the Blanca tequila, look, I don't know. Maybe a Easy Living New York. Tell us how to infuse your stuff with kaffir lime and kiwi because mine didn't taste like anything like kaffir lime. I didn't get any kiwi. I didn't get any of that. So maybe we did it wrong. I don't know. But
Hmm.
um, this was interesting. The matcha kind of was a little grainy at the end feel. And maybe it was because I used a lot because I made it with
Made
matcha, but then I
the
also
cross, yeah.
did
Hmm.
made the cross to make it look all spooky. I thought also one of the things that was interesting is they did like this opposite um, dry shake. So they shook it with ice and then they took the ice out and then did a dry shake,
Hmm.
which I did
It's called a
twice.
reverse dry shake, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was kind of interesting. I don't know if I'd ever really done that before. So it to me it was not nearly as creamy tasting as I would have wanted it to be, and I don't know if it's because I did get a lot of the diluted ice melt in there, and maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe I just didn't do it right.
Hmm.
It was okay. I think this missed the mark on a couple of things. It wasn't very balanced. It was very sour or bitter tasting because of all the lime juice.
Right.
Um, and the green chartreuse just was so bright in there. I wanted something to soften it up a little.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it really was a pretty stiff drink. I didn't hate it, but I didn't really necessarily love it. The QE definitely gets lost in there against the green chartreuse, and QE is a pretty mild flavor anyways. So I think maybe that would soften up the tequila a little bit, give it a little bit softer mouthfeel. But you're already adding in the egg white there, so it's already going to have a very soft mouthfeel. So the QE didn't really add anything to me. But I have to say, Michaela, when I was drinking this, I was reminded of just I think 6 episodes ago we talked about Blazing Saddles, and we did the cocktail for that, which was almost identical to this. It was lime juice, green chartreuse, tequila, simple syrup, but it also had elderflower liqueur in that. And I think that's what this was missing. It just needed something to tie the tequila and the chartreuse together, right? They're too contrasting on their own. There needs to be some kind of
Mm-hmm.
go-between. So either like an elderflower liqueur or maybe like a high-end like triple sec, right? Like a Cointreau or something like that might have been good to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. So now I think I'm interested to try doing that, just adding some elderflower liqueur in here, still doing the matcha, making it green. And I think I'm going to do that when I take the pictures for this cocktail because I haven't done that yet. And then we can talk about that over in our Discord, see what the difference is there. If the addition of a kind of a sweeter liqueur will bring a little bit more balance to that cocktail. So
Yeah.
if you want to check out the Discord, you can find that. The link to it is in the show notes and all over the social medias and stuff like that. So what do you think about that? Adding just a little addition to to kind of bridge the gap because like I agree it was too much like harsh flavors kind of all at once and you have to either like really lean into it and skip like the egg white and stuff and just drink it kind of like a more like a martini kind of a thing or go a different route I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would be interesting. Actually, we should do a couple. We should do the elderflower, but we should also maybe try and make like a kidney, a, a kiwi simple syrup, because maybe that was supposed
Mm-hmm.
to be the thing that softened it a little bit and bridged the gap, but it didn't work for us. And again, we didn't know exactly how the original crafters of this cocktail like envisioned that and did that. So maybe that's totally on us. It would be interesting, I think maybe. So maybe we should try both and see if that helps. Because this looked really good. It definitely was spooky and it was green. I was thinking that it was going to be creamier looking because of the egg white,
Hmm.
and have more of that like pea soup consistency ish because it was going to be more opaque and it wasn't. It was very like you're saying like herbal green, very fresh. Um,
Hmm.
and so that was kind of neat. I wanted to like this a lot because I love green chartreuse in theory, but maybe it's just too much. Maybe it was too much of it for me. I don't know.
That's right. Maybe it was too much for you, and maybe The Exorcist was too much for crowds back when it released in 1973. So let's do this, Michaela. Let's go ahead and grab that. We'll try up a couple of different riffs on it and see what we can come up with, and then we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, The Exorcist.
Somewhere between science and superstition, there is another world. The world of darkness. the one hope, the only hope. The Exorcist.
Spoiler warning for The Exorcist. If you've not seen this film, congratulations, because you're in for a treat. We're going to talk about all the things that are in this film, and it's pretty disturbing stuff. So if you've not seen it, I really suggest, as your friend, as a person who cares about your mental health, press pause, go make a is there someone inside you cocktail, go watch this film, leave the lights on, bring a crucifix if you have any sort of faith in any higher being at all, come back and we can chat about it, because this one's tough, man. This is very scary on a lot of different levels.
This is tough, absolutely, and we talked about it with Psycho and how that might have hit differently in 1960 versus watching it today. This is exactly the same. This is still rough. So 1973, this comes out. It was directed by William Friedkin, and it stars Ellen Burstyn as the concerned mother, Chris McNeil, Jason Miller as Father Karras, Max von Sydow as the exorcism expert Father Marin, and Linda Blair as the possessed Regan. So, Michaela, this was a very big deal, not to put it lightly. It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, winner of Best Sound and Best Adapted Screenplay, but it was also nominated for Best Film Editing, Cinematography, Art Direction, Supporting Actress for Linda Blair, big deal there, Supporting Actor for Jason Miller, Best Actress for Ellen Burstyn, Best Director, William Friedkin, and Best Picture. This was the first horror film to be nominated for Best Picture, so that was a big deal. Obviously, there still have only been, I think, 6 that have been nominated for Best Picture there, but this was the first, and it really opened the door. And we're going to talk about all the legacy bits of that. But it did win, like I said, the Best Sound, rightfully so, and Best Adapted Screenplay because it was based on a book. William Peter Blatty's book of the same name came out in 1971.
Yeah. Remember those days when it only took 15 minutes to like decide to make a film and off of a book and you could make it? It didn't take years and years.
We didn't need 500 people, making CGI for 4 years before the movie could get going.
That's probably true. That's probably true. But I really liken that to this that we talked about Psycho a couple weeks ago, right? Where they read the book. Somebody was like, "Yep, we're going to make a movie out of it." Well, Alfred Hitchcock was like, "Let's do it." I mean, I feel like that's kind of how this went down. A lot of amazingly brave decisions were made in the making of this film. Decisions that have impacted film really in innumerable ways going forward. From the makeup that they used to the sounds that they created, it blows my mind to this day, because we are 41 years out from this film, right?
Right.
No, 51. 51. I can't do math. I have a math degree and I can't count to save my life. I'm sorry. 51 years out, and this film still is so terrifying in so many ways. I'm so glad that it won what it did win for, and I'm so glad it was nominated for the things that it was nominated for, because the acting is pretty impressive. This is a very kind of slow boil from like a slow burn. It's not very scary until the very end, and then you are so scared you can't even. I mean, people had crises of their belief systems after seeing this movie in a very real way, and I'm not making fun of it. I'm legitimately, people were like, I need to go talk to my priest. That is insanely impactful from a movie perspective. Like, all of the things that were put together to make this film, including that staircase. Oh my God, they're real stairs. Did you know this? They're really in Georgetown. Yeah. They are like the most steep looking, terrifying stairs I've ever seen. No wonder it was up for Best Art Direction.
Yeah, don't go up
fall
and down
those things.
Don't go up and down those stairs. Yeah, there's a plaque there. You can go see them if you're ever in that area of the country. But yeah, this was a big deal for sure. And kind of like Psycho, that is obviously scary and terrifying and psychologically manipulative within the viewers. This is the same kind of way, but it also stands alone just as a really good film. You get into like the 80s with slasher films, and those got boiled down to like 70-minute runtime. They were all just kind of scary, but this is actually kind of built on this backbone of being a really great film. So speaking of a great film, let's get into a little bit, Michaela, here. So we're going to open up. I always forget this thing opens up in northern Iraq. You've got your priest there, Father Marin, or maybe he's a Dr. Dr. Marin, I guess, at this point in the film here, because he is part of this archaeological dig. He stumbles across some sort of little like talisman kind of thing, sees it, looks very concerned, has a vision of a large version of this talisman, also looks very concerned. And that's pretty much it. That's all of our time we're spending in northern Iraq, and now we're making our way to Washington, D.C. Michaela, just a word to the wise: if your film opens up with an archaeological dig somewhere like in Egypt, northern Iraq, and like the Middle East somewhere, archaeological dig. If that's how the film opens, you're in for a bad time.
You're in for a bad time because whatever it is that you touch is going to come back to haunt you, literally. Yeah, so we meet Chris McNeil. She is an actress. She's like a super famous actress, actually. She's in the middle of filming this interesting, like it looks like a political diorama, actually, of some kind. Her friend Burke Dennings is director. She lives in this house that she's rented in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. She has a 12-year-old daughter named Regan. Regan seems to be like the sweetest little kid. She doesn't call her mom anything other than mother, which I think is a little strange, but maybe it's because it's a 50-year-old movie. I don't know. But, her and her husband have been separated for a while. And so there's this closeness that Chris and Regan have. It's kind of them against the world, even though they have friends and people who kind of hired help. They have a housekeeper, and she has like a personal assistant who's kind of helping make their life work. But they're just, kind of figuring things out. Her 12-year-old just turns 12. They want to plan outings. She's trying to get her husband to call her daughter on their birthday. And so it's kind of this kind of a chaotic time in their lives anyway. But seemingly normal, seemingly fine. Everything seems okay until they find this Ouija board in the basement.
Yeah, seemingly, pretty normal. It seems like they have a pretty good relationship, these two, right? Like that's not like strained, right? It's not gonna like cause any trouble, and you get to see, yeah, kind of that Ouija board section there. Mom comes down and is like, oh, you know how to do this, and yeah, of course. So they end up doing it, but it seems like they're having a pretty good time. Like Regan's not like any like maladjusted from her mother being the super famous person. It seems like they're probably moving around a lot as she's going from movies to movies, and that seems to be all pretty good. But apparently using that Ouija board is going to make things be not quite so good. Now, meanwhile, kind of in the backdrop of this, right? So we're in Washington D.C. So we're kind of following, obviously, Regan and her mother's story there, and kind of getting this house set up, and kind of living life as she's getting ready to shoot this new film. We're also kind of introduced to this character, Father Damien Karras, who is played by Jason Miller. We see him. We're spending a little bit of time interacting with him, and the way he's kind of communicating with people, speaking with different psychiatrists, different priests, and things like that, and talking about his mother who is in ailing health, and it's really kind of setting up this side story almost within Father Karras of having kind of this crisis of faith. So you're about to have this ultimately very bad, very very bad religious sort of thing that's going to be consuming Regan, right, and becoming the ultimate sort of evil here and that. But you also have kind of this one of these head priests here in the area who is going through his own kind of crisis of faith, and how do those two things kind of mesh up with one another when Dr. Karras is going to be kind of introduced to this situation later on down the line.
And it starts off innocently enough, right? Regan is not feeling well. She has these kind of she has these very like strange episodes. They're at a party that Chris is hosting with one of the other priests who's actually a friend of Father Karras. Father Dyer is there, and they're all like sitting around singing Christmas carols or something. Like it's super innocuous, super simple, nothing strange. But then Regan comes down. She like tells them all they're going to die. She pees in the corner, and her mom is like completely mortified. Like, what is going on? She's been ill. I'm really sorry. And at first she's like, look, what is going on? Is this because of the divorce? Is it because you're not seeing your dad? But then things start to go much more awry. Reagan's bed is shaking violently. That seems really strange. Chris is like, really confused by this whole thing. And so she goes to a couple of doctors, and this is part, I think, of the layers of fear that I didn't fully realize until watching it this time, which is this complete feeling of helplessness and uncertainty around the health of your child. she keeps going to these doctors and they're like, well, she could have a lesion on her brain. She could, this could all be psychosomatic. This could be something wrong with her spine. And so they do these things, these horrible tests. And this is
Mm-hmm.
1973. And so they have things that are like the size of a small VW bug, like, injected into her body, like
Right.
taking pictures of her skull. And they keep saying, well, it looks normal. I don't know. And the mom is just, poor Chris, she's just losing her mind. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so powerful is Ellen Burstyn's performance here.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is not giving up, but she is like, something is wrong. My daughter is getting worse and worse, and I'm losing her. She's becoming a different person. And that's when they finally agree to maybe have some psychological help come in and give us their, expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I really like you Chris here in this film because she is like this concerned mother and like she's trying to go down all the routes that you would go down, all right, to try to find help because yeah, her daughter's something is not right with the daughter. The bed's shaking, she's yelling and having these violent outbursts that like the kind of the hired hands there of the household there, that's not normal, and all these things seem to be going bad, and she's going down all these different routes, right? So what do you do when you have like a sick kid, right? You go to the doctor, they try to diagnose whatever they can. That's yeah, one of the more disturbing images there. She's going into kind of this like I don't know like CAT scan kind of machine, and they're injecting her with this thing so they can track her brain, and blood is like spurting out of her like onto these doctors. That's very traumatic, especially the fact that it's happening to this child in the film. So you get that. So, she's going to talk to the police. You've got the police detective. Or Lieutenant Kinderman there, who's coming in trying to assess the situation to see what's happening. You're calling upon different priests to see what's happening, and no one can really seem to make heads or tails of what's happening. And kind of these disturbing vignettes, I guess, with Regan are kind of getting amplified, right? So you have the one there, obviously at the hospital with that. You get the and then a couple of the other very famous ones of her sitting upright in bed and her head spinning around, of like that reverse kind of like spider walk down the stairs, which is very creepy. And these things just kind of keep escalating and escalating as people start to take this a little bit more seriously and try to decide what the best path forward is for this.
Yeah, and I mean these scenes get worse and worse. Like and we could talk about like the making of and what they did, but again, the makeup and the way that they show this complete change over Reagan. She doesn't look the same. She's develops all these sores. Her eyes are different. She's vomiting all this weird green stuff, and the consistency of it changes. And they had to make some decisions about how that would implicate like how much worse she's getting and how much this demon or whatever inside her is taking over her. And like the one scene that I remember very viscerally is when Reagan's mom is showing the priest like the words "help me" that are like being burned it looks like from the inside of Reagan out on her stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not as striking as when she's like stabbing herself, screaming about God and all these horrible things, but it's pretty terrifying because this poor woman is just watching this happen and she's completely helpless. Luckily for her, Father Karras is going on her behalf to his archbishop and saying, hey, look, I really think we need to perform some sort of rite here. I don't know who to do it. He's having a crisis of faith, which he conveniently forgets to tell everybody. But
Right.
he's like, hey, I can do it. And they're like, nah, maybe we should have somebody else do this thing. It's called this Roman ritual. This guy named, Father Marin, who was just in Africa. And then all these things kind of come together where it's like, oh, that's what the first half of this movie was all about. Okay.
Right.
Here we go.
Yeah, and it does a really good job because, as we mentioned, Karras is having kind of this crisis of faith, so that's happening in the background. In the meantime, one of a gentleman who has been in and had this confrontation with Reagan has gotten, kind of forcefully pushed out the window, which is, why the detectives was brought in there, and he's going to have to go to Karras, right? Detective Kinnerman's going to go to Karras and try to confide in him a little bit, right? You don't want to let like all these things out, but it's also you'd have to kind of handle this with kid gloves because I imagine, if you're a priest, maybe you deal with a lot of these things, right? Everyone thinks the absolute worst, right? So you have to kind of read and survey the situation. So he's going in a little bit, trying to kind of slide in there a little bit with Father Karras, and I like they have like a conversation. He's talking about oh, I have these free movie tickets. I know that you like movies. Maybe that would be good. Hey, since I have you here, let me tell you about this guy who got pushed out this window and his head was snapped around backwards. Do you think that could have been anything potentially? And Father Karras is
Maybe.
like, well, maybe. You had me at free movie tickets. Let's go check this out. And he goes and he pays a visit to Regan, and then you get I would say one of the more iconic shots from this, but really all of the things that Reagan does in this. You get a couple of things here that are going to be really bad. So Kinderman has kind of this first confrontation with Reagan there involving a crucifix. That's not great. It's so upsetting to see her doing that with the crucifix. Now it was the first time I saw it. It is now the 20th time that I've seen it. It would have been disturbing in
Yep.
1973. It's disturbing in 2024. It's going to be disturbing forever. It does that, and then obviously you have the scene there with the vomit with that split pea soup there, as it were, that's going to wash over the face of Father Karras. Maybe that's his baptism into the story to believe into something bad is going on here.
Yeah, and I find it interesting. I mean, he does, try and drop holy water on her. He's trying to talk to her. But it's not until he's recording some of the things that she's saying. Because he doesn't really believe, he thinks something is definitely wrong with her, but he is not believing this really until he realizes that he's talking about her his mother having passed, and there's no way that she would know that
Hmm.
was the case, and certain details. And so he's like, something's not quite right. So when he goes to the church, and he's like, hey, I think this is a real thing. I think it is. He has this recording, and this is where it gets terrifying for me. I mean, it's all very scary, but like this idea that she's speaking these languages and they don't know what it is. At first they're like, well, is it Latin, is it French? And it's like, no, man, it's English and it's backwards. How did she do that? And she has like three different voices. And for me, this is really where like the sound direction, like all of the sounds that are
Hmm.
made in depicting like Reagan's demonic voice is really terrifying. And there's a whole part of documentaries that talk about how they decided to make those sounds and everything, but it's really terrifying.
Hmm.
It would definitely be something that would give me a crisis of faith if I was Catholic, if I was a Catholic priest. But it's at that point they're like, should we do this Roman ritual? Should we do this right? And who's going to do it? Let's have Father Marin come in. This girl is already like, whatever's in her has killed somebody. We think it's only going to get worse. They're gonna and we don't know what the plan is. I mean, that was one of the things that's pretty scary. Is they say, well, do you want to just kill the little girl, and the demon or whatever is like, no, I want us to join. Like, I want the evil in me and the good in the priests, the faith in the priests, to be shattered and killed and become
Hmm.
this whole new thing. And it sounds so much more ominous than just the killing of a girl, which is pretty awful anyway. I mean,
Right. Yeah, I mean that's even, kind of what the demon inside of her says there, right? When the priests show up to do kind of this ritual, the demon says, I'm not going to leave her body until she's dead. So you're going to be you're going to be forced to kill this little girl if you want to get rid of me. That's how you're going to have to do it. And yeah, they start doing kind of this exorcism ritual, going through some things, and eventually, Father Marin is like, Karis, I got this. You go take a break. You're getting too worked up. You're too like emotionally invested in this. He's talking about your mom. Things aren't going good for you. Let me. I'm the expert here. Remember, I'm a doctor. I've been to eat or I've been to northern Iraq. I can do these things. I can do these things. So he's going to be left alone in there, which it doesn't go great for Father Marin, to be quite honest.
yeah. I mean, Father Marion really, you feel like you've seen this before, right? He seems very convinced when, Father Karras is like, hey, there's three beings in her. And he's like, nah, there's only one. And he's very clear. He's like, I want my purple stole. I want the rite in in the Roman ritual in this book. I want these things. I want this cross. Like, this is really important. And he's like, look, you can't listen to anything that comes out of this, little girl's mouth. It's really going to try and get the better of you. And it does. And that's when he sends him out. But when he comes back in, he seems to have this renewed faith. And I think this is really kind of a symbolically important piece. Is Father Karras is outside of the the room where all this stuff is happening, and Chris, the mom, comes to meet him again and says, hey, is my daughter going to die? And he's like, nope, we're not going to let that happen. And it's very quiet. You don't hear any shouting, you don't hear anything from the upstairs room, which is more off-putting than I think if you would have heard, like the bed
Right.
shaking and things. But when he goes in, he sees that Father Merrin has died. He had a heart issue. We knew that. He was taking a lot of nitroglycerin pills. He was popping them like popcorn in Iraq. But Father Merrin is dead, and Father Karras is now like trying to bring him back to life. He's so angry. He's filled with all this rage. And that's when we kind of have the final confrontation between whatever is inside of Regan and Father Karras.
Yeah, they have kind of a final standoff here. Does Karras and this demon inside of Regan there, and it eventually turns into a bit of a kerfuffle. Karras is basically begging and pleading that this demon take over him, and leave this little girl alone. And eventually, kind of lays that bait out there, good enough for that demon to kind of take it. And then it's over as quick as it began, because the demon takes over there, possesses Karras, and Karras flings himself out the window and down those same stairs, because the demon has laid out his plans, right? He was not going to leave until whatever host he was in was dead. So Karras gets that very quick opportunity and seizes it by flinging himself out the window to ultimately kill himself, but to rid the world hopefully of this demon until someone goes back and digs it back up for some reason. But yeah, and then basically that's where that's more or less where this story ends, right? Regan is fine now. Chris is able to go in and console her daughter. Regan is back to normal, and time to get out of there. Something like that happens, you go ahead and you check out. So gonna go. They have kind of their final goodbyes of kind of the house, and Father Dyer there, who had been at the party earlier this year, gonna kind of take one last look there at the stairs that Father Karras sacrificed himself on to do, and that is it. Like, this thing just like elevates and elevates and elevates. Like, it gets to like my knob goes to 11 here on this one, and then boom, just like that, it's done, and it leaves you a little breathless at the end of it, and man, it's good.
Yeah, it's really it's one of those where at the end of it you need some time, I think, to process it.
You need a cigarette. You need
you need about 3 of these cocktails, because there's just so much there that you don't know, you don't have the answers to, right? It's not as clean cut, and like, it's not like so many horror films that end up having a beginning, a middle, an end, and then there's this feeling of peacefulness. You don't think that there's going to be a sequel necessarily, even though there were quite a few of these. What you do think is just this total unsettling feeling of, what was it all for? What was the point of it all? And I think that that's one of the things that when you get into this type of horror genre, that these beings or this evil happens just to happen, and there is no rhyme or reason. There was no, there was no way that it was going to get, it was going to claim a life, at least one, because it could. And that's just why. And the one of the things that I found so comforting at the end was, even though Karras is dying, his Father Dyer sees him at the foot of these stairs and administers last rites. So you feel like, even though he made the decision to kind of end his own life, that from a Catholic perspective, that's been forgiven, and that he's gonna be okay up in heaven, and all of that. So you kind of have this sense of like peaceful foreboding, because it's like, well, if it was that easy to get into this little girl, who's next? And how simple was it? Was it something that she did? Was it anything that she did at all? Was that whole idea of holding on to a cardboard piece of plastic talking to Mr. Howdy at the beginning, was that just a ruse that it used, and it could have done it at any time, and it just decided to use that? Like, there's so many layers of this that make you think about this inherent evil. And again, the set direction is amazing. This house is chilling, and it goes the way the house changes from the very beginning when Chris and Regan are just living there, to like the room that's completely been removed of all its furniture except for the bed, the way that the bed's wrapped up to try and hurt her, give her less things to hurt herself with. Like all of that is just like it just sits with you, and you process it so much after the film. It's great that the soundtrack is as amazing as it is, because you're just kind of sitting there left to kind of process what you just watched, because it goes up to 11, like you say, and then it's over in a matter of like 3 minutes, and you're like left dealing with it.
Yeah, you're left wondering. Yeah, it does an amazing kind of transformation, really. Obviously with Regan and the demon that is inside of her, but also kind of this journey that her mother, that Chris, goes on, and the way she changes throughout the film, the way that Father Karras changes throughout the film, and the way that Father Merrin is going to have to kind of face this battle. Even to the detective there, Detective Kinderman, all kind of go through these this transformation like throughout the film, and the way that they believe and accept like the religious aspect of what is happening, as much so as this terrifying thing that is happening as well. So really, really brilliant stuff. And whenever you have anything that's brilliant that makes like $500 million on $11 million budget, you're going to do things like give it some sequels. So we have The Exorcist Part 2. It comes out in 1977. The Exorcist 3 comes out in 1990. Exorcist The Beginning, 2004. Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist, 2005. The Exorcist Believer in 2023. And apparently there is a reboot that is going on right now, being directed and potentially writing as well by Mike Flanagan, to do a reboot here in 2026. And I like Mike Flanagan, right? Quite a bit there. But I don't know, a reboot that seems a bit off the mark for me. And the big reason for that is I think that kind of like the tone and the world that The Exorcist built is more interesting as like a standalone thing than it is as like trying to figure out the dawn of the exorcisms, and going back and looking at Father Merrin's story and history and stuff. Like, you could have like self-contained of these exorcism stories without trying to connect all of this lore together. And I think that works better, kind of in more of like an Exorcist like serialized fashion. There was also a television series 2016 and 2017 called The Exorcist. So go watch any of those if you want to. I don't know, we'll see if the new one ever comes out, if it ever sees the light of day, and if it changes anything. Did you ever see any of these other ones? I think I might have seen Exorcist 2, maybe.
Yeah,
I didn't see any of the other ones.
I think I saw The Exorcist 2 and The Exorcist 3, or maybe I only saw the second one. And then my dad was like, look, at some point,
he's like, let me stop you right there.
Yeah. Okay, he's like, I think one of the things that's, again, it's so terrifying is that there was no rhyme or reason to why like Linda Blair's Regan was picked, right? Like there's no, and I think that they tried to like attach her to these films and say, well, it's because she was special, kind of like in a Poltergeist kind of way. That Poltergeist tried to do later. And he was like, I don't know if that works really well. But so I didn't see anything other than, I think maybe I saw the second one. I don't know. It makes me kind of sad that we are rebooting a lot of these really classic films, because I think that I don't know, it distracts almost from the original, and this one's so good. And it's almost doomed before it begins. It's kind of like The Crow, right? In the sense that even if it's amazing in its own right, people are going to be like, yeah, but it's nothing like this one. And it's hard because again, I think they'd get more traction if they just, use the Exorcist idea of possession, but not try to recreate the entire story. Right. I think that would be better from an audience perspective. But again, that's art for you. People either, they want to do what they want to do. And, but this was amazing. If you've not seen this film, it is absolutely worth your time. Even if you don't like horror movies, it's not kind of a boo, gotcha, scary. It's much more subtle than that. It is much more, it's much deeper than that. And it's, in my opinion, much scarier than that. You're going to be thinking about this, whether you are like a believer in like demonic possession or any of that, you're going to be thinking about certain aspects of this for a very long time.
That's
Guaranteed.
right. Absolutely. Yeah. The level of disturbing that this is has not waned at all. So heed that in mind if you've never seen The Exorcist here as we make our way to Halloween. So that's going to wrap it up here for The Exorcist, I believe. So let us know at home if you saw The Exorcist part four. I don't know, what was it? The Exorcist. If you went and saw The Exorcist,
The beginning and then
Dominion
the
prequel to The Exorcist.
Dominion.
If that's the best Exorcist, let us know that. For sure, it's not. Let us know what you think about The Exorcist, and let us know if you make a is there someone inside of you cocktail to go along with it. If you want to see pictures of our cocktails, episode recaps, all that stuff, you can do that on our website. It's www.drinkthemovies.com. Go there. That's going to have links to the merchandise shop, to the Drink the Video Games, to all the things we got going on here. The website is your one-stop shop for all that stuff. So go check it out there. If you want to follow along on our social medias, that's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, X, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. Basically anywhere you go for your social media happenings, we are there posting pictures of cocktails, letting you know what movies we're watching, all that good stuff. That's a great way to connect with us. And check out the Discord, as I mentioned earlier. That link is down in the bio as well. So Michaela, they've done all that, right? They've checked out the website. Maybe they bought a hat for trick or treat night. Who knows? Who knows? But they're going to make sure that they're following along with the podcast because we have been talking about some absolute bangers here this year. We really like peak like mountaintop, right? We did Psycho, we were doing The Exorcist, and next week maybe we're doing I don't know, it's certainly one of my favorites and one of a lot of people's favorites slashers of them all. We're getting into Freddy. Nightmare on Elm Street. We've got coming everyone's way next week. So you want to make sure you're tuned in for that. Michaela, where should they be doing that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. If you're liking what you're hearing, we do 2 drops a week. We do a big long one like the one you're listening to now. We also have our lobby bar. It's much shorter. You know, yeah, they're fun. They're both fun. If you like them, if you're liking what you're hearing, press the subscribe button. If you're really liking what you're hearing, leave us a 5-star review. Send us a note on what you want to hear next. We love requests. If it's a movie we haven't covered, if it's a cocktail or a liqueur we haven't tried, we love all of that. And we only get to do this job because we have listeners like you that form this community. So it really thanks to you. We appreciate it so much. Yeah. And if you love video games, you should really check out Brian's Drink the Video Games because it's been out for a couple months now. There's a couple episodes out there and they're all fantastic. You get to see
Thank
me
you.
for like 15 seconds in it to talk about a cocktail, but they're very good. So you should check those out as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And yeah, this month's episode is Grim Fandango, so perfect for the Halloween time of year. So appreciate everyone checking that out. And we appreciate everyone that stopped in to talk about The Exorcist with us today. So with that, Michaela, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to grab some kiwis. I'm going to try my hand at mixing up another one of these cocktails. We're going to go get scared by Freddy. And we'll talk to everyone next time on
Drink the
the
Movies.
Movies.
I don't even know of a good line because all of them are awful.
Your mother
True.
does something in hell. I think it's
Yeah, your mother does something to somebody. Yep. Ugh.